Hey, it's Jack from Jack Gately Real Estate and the Online Real Estate Academy. And we're coming to you today to talk about the Realtor brand and the implosion of the Realtor brand over, say, the last 6 or 7 months. So for those of you who are not up to date on this quick history of the last 6 or 7 months here, it all really started with the resignation of the president of the organization after a New York Times expose on sexual harassment claims, allegedly. And Kenny Parcell, the president of the association, resigned shortly thereafter this article came out, or the previous article, in the summertime, August of 2023. President of Powerful Realtors Group resigns after sexual harassment claims, calls for Kenny Parcell to step down. Began immediately after the New York Times published an article with complaints of harassment and discrimination with multiple women. So that was bad. Then late October, the National Association of Realtors lost a court case. This is known as the Bomb Sale Commission lawsuit. And the damages on that were $1.8 billion, but it's actually tripled because it's an antitrust violation. So that's north of $5 billion of potential loss. It's not like they have to pay that right away, but it's not a good look. Let's just say that. And clearly, before any of this happened, the association was also facing some significant headwinds in public opinion writ large, but these are more like acute crisis situations. And then that was followed up with earlier this week, the new president of the association on Monday, the person that came in to rescue the association after the whole sexual harassment situation, she resigned because she was being blackmailed, some type of blackmail threat. Tracy Casper, the president of the association, resigned on Monday after a blackmail threat, which we never got the details of, but she told us in a statement that, and released to everybody, that it was a past personal non-financial matter. Past personal non-financial matter. So those are all massively acute crises. It's FUBAR, right? Totally, yeah, bleeped up. Exactly. And what's happened, especially since the October lawsuit situation, is then there's been multiple additional lawsuits, including this week, which are new lawsuits in Arizona, Illinois, and New York. These are just in the last couple of weeks, or reported in the last couple of days, I should say. They've been filed a couple of weeks ago, but now they're just getting the light of day. So now we're up to something like 13 or 14 lawsuits. It's hard to kind of keep track of how many lawsuits there are out there. Literally need a spreadsheet. Recently, the National Association of Realtors and some of the defendants in the Bomb Sale Commission lawsuit that they lost in October for $1.8 billion, triple that, they filed some motions to basically dismiss the court case and say, no, actually, we should have won. But those motions are kind of lawyers being lawyers, and it's probably not going to go anywhere, right? So they probably have lost. In the meantime, there is an effort to herd all of these copycat lawsuits into one mega lawsuit, and it is kind of like herding cats. Herding lawyers and herding cats, kind of like the same thing. But there is a federal government court board, or whatever you want to call it, that basically tries to consolidate these cases, and that's probably where things are going right now. So that brings us to the course situation here, where we want to talk about what's happened to the Realtor brand now that you have the background. And there's an article here in Inman the other day: Realtors fair damage to NAR brand beyond repair following the Casper exit. You think? Yeah. This is damage. This is like a perfect storm of damage. I really think of brand damaging events are either one, self-inflicted, because we're all our own worst enemy, right? And imagine if I said something incredibly insensitive, right, on this channel, that would be in self-inflicted brand damage, right? Don't want to do that. And then there's external damage. In this particular case, we are facing both situations. We've had internal damage from the sexual harassment claims from Kenny Parcell, the president that resigned this past summer. That's internal damage or self-inflicted. And then we've had these court situations, which are external. You could also kind of make a case that they're internal kind of in a way because they've set themselves up for that. But those are external threats, court cases, legal challenges. And then you've had this resignation, which is also kind of like a mixture of an internal and an external situation, in which case, she reported it to the cops, but then she still resigns. Why don't you just keep the job? You were doing okay. Why don't you keep it's just one thing after the other. It reminds me of two things that happened in the 80s. One was a self-imposed brand damage. And that was the creation of New Coke. The creation of New Coke. New Coke, reformulating the classic Coke recipe, was and is considered one of the all-time worst marketing decisions ever. It's such a classic marketing disaster that it's actually featured on the official Coca-Cola website. And this is it. This is the official Coca-Cola website where they talk about how bad an idea it was to rebrand Coke. New Coke, the most memorable marketing blunder ever, the history of New Coke, from 1985. The Coca-Cola company took the arguably biggest risk in consumer goods history, announcing that it was changing the formula of the world's most popular soft drink, spawning consumer angst, the likes of which no business has ever seen. Basically, what you're saying here with the with these sexual harassment things and the blackmail thing is basically a realtor version of New Coke. But it gets worse because when you look at the lawsuit situation, that is much more like the 1980s, earlier 1982 Tylenol situation. In other words, it's an external threat. And both of these organizations, Coke and Tylenol, they survived, right? And those are really strong brands today. And both of those situations morphed into this brand new industry called crisis communications or crisis management, where eventually organizations learned that when you're under a massive threat and there's one domino after another, you definitely, absolutely, positively have to manage this aggressively. Now we have some comments here. Bushy Top says down with NAR. Thank you. The great comment there. And thank you very much for that. And we'll read your other comment in a minute. Thank you. And what they're not doing that is my point. The whole Tylenol situation, by the way, it ended up actually being a movie. They made a movie out of the Tylenol situation, and the Coke situation is something that if you take any marketing class, high school or in college, you're going to learn about the New Coke thing. And I was in high school at the time, being a man of a certain age, and I remember both of those crises. They gripped the nation. But when you take a look at what NAR is doing right now, you're like, whoa, what are they doing? Their president resigned on Monday, and January 8th was Monday, right? And today is the 11th. And what have they said since, other than issuing the press release? Well, if you go to the official NAR communications webpage. They have the NAR resigns president events on January 8th. And then the next thing they post is Realtors Foundation welcomes new vice president. And I'm sure the Realtors Relief Foundation is a wonderful organization. I'm sure they do wonderful things. But what are they thinking about? And when you go over to their YouTube channel, the last video they have posted up there is the president that resigned. They have basically been radio silence on their official webpage, on their YouTube. If you pull up their Instagram, they still have the Tracy Casper post up there. If you go over to their X account, they still have the Tracy Casper post pinned. And again, about the Realtor Relief Foundation, who cares? And then if you go over the Facebook situation, it's the same story. It's just they have done nothing. Now, I told you before on this channel that I've been fortunate enough to observe the new president of the National Association of Realtors. And remember, folks, I'm not a member. I kicked them to the curb like 4 or 5 years ago. The new president used to be the president or the chair of the Board of Registration of Massachusetts, of real estate brokers and salespersons here in Massachusetts. So I've seen this guy, because I usually attend those meetings, often in person, if not now virtually. But so I've seen this guy in action. And I got to tell you, like, he is a very level-headed, he has a good presentation, and you would think that, like, he was going to say to himself, I've got to get out in front of this. Just like Coke or Tylenol or any other big company that's facing a massive crisis, things move a lot faster than they did in 1982 or 1985. You can go anywhere all over the internet. I found this really basic article, but I think it has some really good lessons. Maybe the folks at NAR might want to read this from Sprout Social, the role of social media in a crisis communication. And they have a number of case examples here. With Cloudflare, they had an outage, and Slack had an outage. What's the lesson? Be as honest and transparent and accessible as possible. When you haven't posted on your accounts for days, other than something nonprofit, you're not being honest, transparent, and accessible. You're turtling. The National Association of Realtors over the last 3 or 4 days, and you could argue over the last 6 months, they have turtled. Even when they had Tracy Casper, she was a pretty good spokesperson for their point of view. She all siloed up. Instead of giving interviews to all sorts of YouTubers or all sorts of media people, CNBC, no. She released like one video, which was not a bad video, but in a silo on your own webpage, that's not reaching the masses, not reaching them. A really bad decision. Let's go back to Sprout Social here. Aldi's hairy caterpillar predicament. I got to admit, I don't remember this predicament. The lesson here: engage your audience and use social media to your advantage. Are they using social media to their advantage? They're not even using it at all. Let's see. KFC. Apparently they ran out of chicken in the United Kingdom. I didn't know that. 2018. Don't lose sight of your brand voice during a crisis. And so what did the chicken people do? KFC. You know, I like once or twice a year I'll go to KFC, right? They made fun of the situation. I don't know if the realtors can make fun of the current situation, but they like made light of it. Hey, we're doing our best. In a word, yes, well, almost. 95% of our restaurants are now up and running. They kept people informed, but with a little bit of humor. The Tide Pod situation. Remember the whole Tide Pod situation? What's the lesson? When it makes sense, partner with influencers and celebrities. So they got Rob Gronkowski. Remember him? And this got 10 million views on Twitter. Remember Rob Ronco? He came out and said, "Don't eat the Tide Pods. That's not a good move." And they got beyond that, right? Tide is a very strong brand. But what you're seeing now from the realtors is radio silence. It's literally like brand suicide is what they're doing. They need a crisis response team. They actually need people who understand communications in 2024. And you can post to your internal Realtor Hub website that goes out to the members. You can post all you want there. But until you start going out and actually addressing these issues in an aggressive, positive manner, then you're not going to make any progress in the court of public opinion or probably in the legal situation either. People wonder, you look at this Inman article, people fear the damage to the NAR brand beyond repair. And unless they turn this around like tomorrow, that damage seems to have been done and might be irreplaceable. So, Jack, why do I care? I'm not a realtor member. I don't care. Well, I think if you're in the real estate industry, there are many things that the Realtor Association does that are good. And if you want that to continue, then you'd probably want the association to be healthy. Plus, as many of you know, I'm not a realtor, but a lot of people still call me a realtor, right? So I get slimed with all the realtor baloney that's going on. Most people think I'm a real. It's become like Xerox or Kleenex, right? It's such a strong name, it almost now meaningless. And when someone calls me, like a client calls me a realtor, do I correct them? I don't have the time to do that, right? I'm not going to get into the whole debate about so everyone thinks I'm a realtor, even though I'm not. And consequently, because it's an all-encompassing name brand that applies to almost everybody in the business, I get slimed with their gook, even though I'm not a member, right? So, like, in that case, I definitely want them to fix this up. All right, so let's see what this next comment is here. There should be more lawsuits. There probably will be, especially for kickbacks to realtors that the home buyers aren't privy to. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by it. Happens mostly on new construction, where the builders try to entice agents. Okay, so I don't know a lot about that exactly, but I'm sure there's many things out there that are at least unethical, if not illegal. For sure. In the new construction situation, there might be a requirement to have a little bit more transparency. I don't know, because it seems like, at least in some areas, there seems to be a market manipulation that might occur in the new construction market. We'll just leave it like that. But great point, Bushy Top. When are they gonna wake up? I think the new guy, Mr. Sears, having observed him as chairman of the board of registration here in Massachusetts, could be a really good spokesperson. But if you're not out there, then let me just tell you, if you're not out there defining the issue, then someone else is going to do it for you. Learned that lesson a long time ago. I worked in politics for a very long time, well over 10 years. And if you're not going to define yourself, somebody is going to do it for you. And that's exactly what's happening with the implosion of the Realtor brand. All right, so I'm John F. Gately. You can call me Jack, here from Jack Gately Real Estate and the Online Real Estate Academy. We'll keep you posted. Go make some money. Bye-bye.